Good afternoon, good evening. We love Zoom for being such an extraordinary way for us to connect with Baruch alumni around the world. Our alumni network has 160,000 graduates and we're in 113 countries. We're hoping to have representation from 20 plus countries today. So really appreciate your joining us. And if you'd like to add in the chat where you are zooming in from, we'd love to know. My name is Janet Rosbach. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Volunteer Engagement. I've been with the college almost 8 years. And when the pandemic hit, we decided to pivot from our in-person events to our to Zoom programming, and we really have been delighted by the number of alumni who have shown up for our events. The pandemic is what prompted the birth of this Europe, Middle East, Africa Alumni Network. So you'll hear a little bit more about that shortly. But first, I would love to introduce my colleague, Interim Associate Dean Kanan Mohan from the Zicklin School of Business to give a brief welcome and update to you all about some of Baruch's international initiatives. Kanan.
Thank you, Janet. It's my great pleasure to see you all. Welcome to the alumni panel. On behalf of the Zicklin School and Dean Fenwick Haas, I extend warm thanks to all of you for joining the panel and also to continuing working with us and engaging with us in a variety of different ways. So it's great to meet you all. And hopefully, eventually, we'll get the chance to see face-to-face in some form or another in the next few months or years. At Zicklin, I started very recently in this role as Associate Dean, about a year and a half old in this role. And one of my part of portfolios is the global programs, global partnerships, and also innovative ways of thinking about curriculum when we do global engagement. So at Zicklin, we have been working consistently well in expanding our global footprint in building partnerships with a variety of universities, bringing students in from those places to Baruch and Zicklin. Our thinking is that not only is it enriching for the students that come from various parts of the world to Baruch, but it enriches students here locally as well to be in the same classroom and share various lived experiences. In the undergraduate space, we've been doing really well for a while now with a strong partnership with a 3+1 program. But the more dynamic, active work is going on in the graduate space in the last few years. We have developed multiple dual degree programs with partners across the world. Some of the recent ones are actually in Europe. We have had long-standing relationships with a variety of Chinese universities, but recently we had a new French institution, IESEG, join our global dual degree partnership. We're very excited about it, and we are yet to kick off students coming in from that program. It's a relatively new agreement. And we have had for maybe 4 or 5 years now really strong partnerships with a couple of Italian institutions, one at Bolzano, great partners, and Padua as well. And the fascinating part of this is I get to meet the students that come from the partner institutions and really phenomenal experiences that they bring to the table when they sit across the aisle with our students and experience this. The last year and a half, of course, has been pretty challenging. We've been operating under constraints. But I would like to think we pivoted really well. And now it's the silver lining of all of this is we can bring people across the world really easily together. And all of our global dual degree students, either they have a chance to come here when it permits, or they join us online for a variety of programs. We also had interesting partnership that we started with Unilurio Business School in Mozambique. A big thanks to an introduction from our Baruch alumnus, Ambassador Carlos dos Santos, the Mozambique ambassador for the US. About a few weeks back, I made opening remarks in the entrepreneurship webinar series, where Unilurio students engaged with us. It was a very engaging experience to be part of that event. And interestingly, some of the key elements of many of our global partners, and in this case, particularly with Unilurio, the focus on development and commitment to community align well with some of the things that we do at the Zicklin School and Baruch. The last thing I would say is, many of you already know that we have a consulting practicum as part of our MBA program. And that's one of the interesting pieces where we are expanding globally as well, where our MBA students get to work with organizations, both locally, community organizations, and large-scale organizations across the world. And the faculty member that leads it, Tony Farina, has been working with organizations across the world to build consulting opportunities for students to have that kind of holistic thinking about global business. So I'll finish there and I'll stop. And it's great again to see you all. I really look forward to hearing about the conversation with the panelists today on a really interesting topic. Janet, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kanan. Yes, we were so excited to build that partnership with Unilurio in Mozambique. And if any of you are involved with universities where you think a possible partnership might be fruitful, and or you have teams in your organization where having a project outsourced for free to some Baruch MBA students, please do reach out, as we would love to talk to you about that. I would like to now introduce Alex Shykat and Elia. There we go, Elia Vaknin, who have been leaders of our alumni network in Israel, and did a wonderful pivot when the pandemic started. So Alex, please.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you, and welcome everyone. It's really amazing to see how many people we were able to gather from all across the world. It's fascinating to see how our effort to create this network led to this amazing panel. And I'm looking forward to this conversation because both interesting and exciting to see so many people and faces from all across the world. I want to say just very quickly that, you know, with technology now, the world is becoming such a small place. Regardless of where we are, regardless of where we live, where we work, technology brings us all together, and it feels like we're almost in the same room. Not quite there yet, but very, very close. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be in a conversation and connected to so many amazing individuals who all basically share the same thing of graduating from this amazing college, which is Baruch. And this is already something that brings us all together and unites us. So it's amazing to see all of you. I just want to point out that if you haven't joined our LinkedIn group or our WhatsApp group, please do so. It's an opportunity for all of us to connect and network. And not only do we announce an update about upcoming events, but there's also an incredible opportunity there for making a professional and a personal leap in your careers. I just want to share quickly that if you are in the WhatsApp group, you've probably seen that one of our peers and colleagues from Israel traveled to Milan, and he met with friends over there, which was absolutely amazing. They haven't met each other before. They weren't. Thank you. But they've met and they spent a great time together. I'm also happy to announce that in the professional aspect, I've had a couple of people reaching over to me as representative of companies that wanted to do strategic partnerships with the company that I'm working for. So, you know, we're all people, but we work for companies, but we are, as individual people, can help and represent these organizations and help make this initial connection because we already know each other. We're already part of the same network. So don't think of this as just a place where we can gather and hear amazing conversations, which is great as it is, but think of all the opportunities and amazing things it can bring us. And I just think it's both an honor and a great opportunity for all of us. So thank you for joining. Enjoy the show, and here's to many, many more in the new year. Thank you so much. Back to you, Janet.
Thank you, Alex. Elia, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, I just want to just to give you an example also, that the fact that we have this panel and a collaboration with our amazing guest speaker from Germany, from Israel, from Dubai, it's thanks to our effort to connect. So thinking about this opportunity and what else we can do together really excites me, and I hope it really excites you. So I'm curious to hear what's going on and to connect with you. So feel free to message us privately.
Perfect. Thank you so very much. I am now delighted. I'm working with my spotlight functionality here. I am now delighted to introduce Gregory Leparati, who is our moderator for today's panel, and I will bring up our panelists as well.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Greg Leparati. Thank you, Janet. As Janet mentioned, I'm Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at Baruch. Outside of the college, I'm also a motorsports and tech writer for a variety of publications like the Washington Post, GQ, the LA Times. And I'm delighted to be here to chat with some really interesting alumni and friends who work in the automotive sector. So to start things off, I would like to just quickly ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly, say where they're based and what they're currently doing. And let's start with Peter. Do we have Peter on? I think
I'm looking for him.
I think Peter may have had some technical issues. So let's,
Yes.
Marco, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. Actually, good evening from my side. I'm Marco Falzoy. I'm currently based in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And since the last couple of years, I've been based here and I'm working with Lamborghini, and for which I'm managing Middle East and Africa. So here based in Dubai, but there's the Gulf and mainly South Africa. It's quite a big region, but it's treating me well so far.
Thank you, Marco. Ron.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to see you and chat with you today about automotive. My name is Randa Nanai. I'm here on two hats. One as an automotive expert. I'm the CEO of Toyota and Lexus in Israel. And I'm dealing with various mobility companies within the group. And I'm here also as the son of Shimon Yaakov, another panelist, whom I've learned everything about automotive. So pleasure to see you all and looking forward for fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And let's hear from Shimon. I know Shimon was having some technical issues as well. Oh, let me get you to unmute. Is Shimon able to unmute? Unfortunately, we can't hear you, Shimon. I'm sorry. Oh, there we go.
Now you
Perfect.
can hear me? Okay.
Perfect.
So I graduated from Baruch 1970. And after graduation, I came to Israel to build Avis rent-a-car services in Israel. I worked there for 15 years as the general manager. And then I moved to Europcar and I had my own franchise for Europcar in Israel for another 5-6 years. And then I built a company, which is a broker company, which we work with car rentals mainly in all over the world. We have a partnership in UK, Holiday Auto, and we have more than 1 million rentals a year. We work all over with all the car rental companies.
Thank you very much, Shimon. Thank you to all of our panelists. Hopefully, Peter will be able to rejoin us soon. So, for my first question, I'd like to go a little big picture here. And Ron, I'm going to ask you, since Peter's not here at the moment, but I'd like to ask you, Ron, in regards to the pandemic, how has the pandemic most notably impacted the automotive industry for the past nearly 2 years now that we've been enduring it? Oh, sorry, Ron, could you unmute yourself?
Thank you. So it's really a phenomenon. It's something that we have never experienced, at least in 20 years that I'm in the automotive. I've never experienced such a thing. It started from a hit that nobody bought vehicles and everybody were in lockdowns. So all the factories stopped and all the demand for parts also went down. So manufacturers reduced their projections. And then suddenly it blew up all the demand and people came back to life. And the demand today is like twice as a regular year, twice as much as a regular year. And for that, the manufacturers were not being prepared. And all the parts, chips, and materials have not been prepared accordingly. And for that reason, we are lacking a lot of vehicles today. So we see a soaring used cars prices, while no new cars coming up. So it's really a phenomena that I've never experienced as a marketeer. I was tuned to push sales and try to accelerate sales, but today I have nothing to sell. So we are more on a pull side and trying to maximize profitability within the small volumes that we have. So it's a phenomenon that we learn to live with that. I believe that in the second half of 2022, this will be stabilized.
Interesting. Thank you, Ron. One of the big disruptors in this space is electric vehicles. We've been seeing it explode here in the United States in the last year or so. I'm curious to know, Shimon, what do you sort of see being the future for electric vehicles? How have you noticed its growth, and what impact will it have in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, I think that what will happen, no one will need a car to own a car. It will be more as a mobility service, and you can get a car every place from the car rental companies by membership or by application or something. You just, whenever you need a car for an hour or to go to work and then return it, and then you take a car to go back. So you don't have to own a car, because you can take the car by having application or membership. The car rental companies will enjoy the electric car because it's very good for them. They don't need service. They don't need to stop a car for a day or two to fix it. It's very easy. Maybe they will be able to use the car even longer now. Now they own a car for 6 months. Maybe now they will have the car for a year or a year and a half. So it will be very good for them. We still don't know what will be in the second-hand market, but for sure, it will help them to reduce cost. The problem today is that you don't have enough electric places where to fill the car. But where you have a need, you have always somebody to fill it. So I think that in the near future, you'll see places to fill a car, like hotels, like attractions places, like shopping centers. Every place will have a place that when you come there, you fill the car for an hour and you go on. The cars today, you can drive a car between 400 to 600 kilometers. The average rental today is about 200 kilometers a day, 250 kilometers a day. It means that you will need to fill up the car at least every second day. And I'm sure that in the near future, the electric car will be able to be driven for 800 kilometers, maybe 1,000 kilometers. So you can have the car for 4 days, maybe a week without charging it. So for the rental car companies, it's very attractive.
Wow, thank you, Shimon. Those are some pretty big changes that you're speaking of, which is fantastic to hear. Ron, I'm curious, I know you work in some capacity in terms of electric vehicle charging stations and things of that nature. Where are we, not only in Israel, but around the world in terms of the infrastructure needed to support electric vehicles and make them more mainstream?
Yes, today there are basically two types of chargings. What is the slow charge, AC, what they call, that we charge at home or in a restaurant, or very simple charging facility. And there's the fast charge DC infrastructure, which is more expensive and fast charge. What we see is that electrified America and in some countries in Europe, already countries are rolling fast chargers along highways to accommodate the need for infrastructure for electric vehicles. While at home, you have the small charger, which we call the AC home charger. This one takes, the latter one takes about 6-7 hours to charge a vehicle, while the earlier one, the DC fast charge, is like maybe half an hour to charge a vehicle. I'm sure, as Shimon mentioned, the technology will evolve into a way that the charging will be faster, technology will be cheaper, and then we'll have more availability of chargers. This is what we see today. So countries are incentivizing, government are incentivizing companies to roll out these investments for the future.
Thank you, Ron. I do want to remind all of our guests in attendance, you can put your questions in the chat for our panelists, and later on in this event, we will try to get to as many questions as we can. So make sure to direct questions to the chat. Well, thank you, Ron. Shifting gears a little bit, no pun intended, I want to talk a little bit about motorsports. And to that, I want to speak to Marco, who's at Lamborghini, no stranger to motorsports. Motorsports are having a little bit of a renaissance right now. I know in the United States, Formula One's getting really big. You've got Formula E getting big now, which is about electric vehicles. Many decades ago, motorsports was viewed primarily as a marketing tool for some of the big car companies. Obviously, things have changed a little bit now. I'm curious, Marco, at Lamborghini and other companies like it, how do you view motorsports in relation to the company's other ambitions?
As you said, Greg, motorsport was always being used as a marketing tool. And to be honest, I think that motorsport will still continue to have some sort of role in these, let's say, in the ambitions of these kind of performance-oriented brands. This is because it's always been this type of marketing tool, almost primal, because it leverages on adrenaline, on emotions, of the viewers, of the people involved, the manufacturers, the drivers, the teams. It really works on adrenaline. And so even if the industry at the moment is shifting to hybridization, electrification, and it seems to be moving away from what's adrenalinic, what's racing, what's motorsports, I really think that the brands, the manufacturer, will find a way to drive, again, no pun intended, to drive these evolution of the industry, this electrification, hybridization, to something that is still sporty and exciting. And the racing environment, as you mentioned, Formula E, is quickly adapting to it. So to make one quick example that at least to me feels very representative of this, we are moving to what was, 10 years ago, the stereotype of the hybrid automotive product which was the Toyota Prius, the stereotype of hybrid at the moment, which was far from sporty or exciting, it was exciting in terms of technology, but not really in terms of performance. We're shifting from that to a situation today where big brands like Ferrari, Porsche are moving into hybridization and electrification. We have brands that almost out of nowhere, like Rimac, which is a hypercar producer in Europe, it's again out of the blue. It's purchasing brands like Bugatti that is being around for more than a century now, and it's the perfect example of internal combustion engines, of motorsport, of not electric, not hybrid. Or again, you have brands like Porsche that has successfully entered the Formula E, and it's attracting a lot of attention into that as well. So to make it short, even if the industry is quickly evolving, I think that the good old race on Sunday, sell on Monday philosophy, I think it's here to stay.
Thank you, Marco. Interesting. And, in regards to motorsports, a few months back, I told some of our panelists a few days ago about this. A few months back, I covered a race that was a fully autonomous race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was cars going 150 miles per hour, driverless, racing wheel to wheel around the speedway. And they're going to bring that to the Consumer Electronics Show in a couple of months for a follow-up race, all trying to prove that driverless cars can be trusted and be safe. They can race safely, they can drive on our highways safely. Which brings me to my next question. I'm curious to know about the impact that driverless cars could have on the industry. And Ron, I'd like to ask you, in regards to self-driving cars, do you see them becoming a dominant force in the industry in the foreseeable future? What needs to be done to get us there?
Within your question, there was a very important phrase, within foreseeable future. And I don't see within the foreseeable future, I don't see autonomous vehicles. And I'm talking about anything between 5 to 15 years. I don't see driverless cars on the roads of Paris, picking up customers and dropping them somewhere else. It's very far from us yet. However, we will have driverless cars in closed compounds, which is more safe environment to operate. This is one. And second, we might see also dedicated lanes for autonomous vehicles. So for that, vehicles would be able to drive in a much more secure manner with their systems. Everywhere we will have a driver person have to conflict with a machine, there is a risk. So there's a technical risk and also ethical risk about driverless cars. So within the foreseeable future, I don't see driverless cars. I do see them in nominal and protected areas, in protected way, as driving safely. This is much more realistic scenario.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, and it makes sense also. It seems like a lot of infrastructure investment would have to be made to really get driverless cars to be safely coexisting on the road. So anytime that gets into play, that it's not going to happen overnight when it comes to that. So good point. I'm curious to know, Shimon, when it comes to electric as well as driverless vehicles, the rental car space also works closely with the leisure and tourism market. How do you see electric and driverless vehicles possibly impacting that?
Well, driverless cars, as Ron said, I don't see it in the near future. So I really don't know what will happen. But electric car will come very soon to the industry. I think that it's easier to drive, it's easier to rent because it's all electronic. You just put a credit card or just your telephone and it's registered the number of the car and you go. For the car rental companies, it's very easy to operate. It's really no breakdown, no car stop on the road, it's no gear, no service. It will be cheaper to operate. The only problem today is that you don't have where to fill them up, but I'm sure that in the near future it will be solved, because everyone in the tourism industry will put a machine to fill up the car. It's easy to drive. It's no problem to operate. So I see a big future for the rental car companies.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Driverless cars, one thing in regards to that is that a lot of rideshare companies have been exploring that, the Ubers and Lyfts of the world. And some people have suggested that this could be a real threat to the automotive industry. People might be more willing to want to, call car services that are totally driverless to take them from point A to point B. Ron, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Do you view driverless cars as a potential threat to the automotive industry, or something that could be, in a nice harmony with the automobile industry?
I don't think it's a threat. I think it's a threat on the automotive, traditional manufacturers, because then the vehicle becomes, with electrification, it becomes really a mobile phone on wheels with AI system. And there's no advantage to the traditional OEMs of Toyotas or Ford or GM. So in this respect, there is a threat. However, people need to commute. And when people need to commute, vehicles are let's say, the most popular and needed manner to commute within cities and intercities. There is a deal now. Everybody read about it. Tesla bought 100,000. Hertz bought 100,000 Teslas. Half of them going to Uber, as you mentioned. So there will be kind of rent a car, as Shimon mentioned, utilizing electrification of vehicles with some sort of autonomous within the Teslas. And these vehicles should serve commuters. These commuters, if the service will work well by Uber and Tesla, these commuters will reduce their need for a private vehicle. So I see two threats. One threat is on the technology side, that the automotive industry is more of a manufacturer rather than a AI driverless vehicle machines. This is one threat. On the other hand, the threat comes from the demand side, that once there is a good service of autonomous electrified vehicle, people will need less vehicle for their own purpose. And then the demand will go down and people will consume less cars. So to your answer, yes, there is a threat. However, I cannot assess now how near is the threat and how large is the threat.
Thank you, Ron. I loved your term "smartphone on wheels" too. That's a good one. Marco,
could say that.
Yes. Yeah.
I could say that maybe the big companies, they could get a service for a tourist which fly around. They come to Rome, and he take a car. He goes to Firenze, and go to the company, to Avis or Hertz, and say, "Take this car, give me another one." And he drive to Milan, give the car, take another one. So they can give this service without the bother of filling up the car.
Interesting. Thank you, Shimon. Marco, I'm curious now to ask you a little bit. A lot of us on the call here are familiar with the US market, with the European market when it comes to automotive. But you work in the Middle East and African sectors. So I'm curious to know what some of the unique challenges and opportunities are there for you in the work you do over there.
Well, this part of the world, this part of this region in the automotive sector in particular has been growing quite fast and in a relatively short period of time compared to, like you said, North America or Europe, which are notoriously more mature markets, at least in terms of the automotive industry. For manufacturers, for the industry itself, this creates an issue itself or a threat itself, a risk, because this growth has been quite steep, quite big. It's a big region, big markets, a lot of spending potential from customers. There was the desire to grow and grow fast. So again, the main difficulty is to maintain this growth and avoid, let's say, the roller coaster, or at least to make it stable. And not only it's difficult to make it stable, but in a moment where we are we are moving from a more standard, what we now call the standard automotive field, so internal combustion engine, private ownership of cars, moving to a less standard approach, so an innovative approach, so moving away from internal combustion engine to hybridization, to electrification, especially in this part of the world where the oil and oil-related products, and it's very tied to the economy, to the health of the economy, and to the market itself. You do see, if you go around the city, around Dubai or around the rest of Middle East, you do see Teslas, for example, but it's a little bit of a contradiction in this part of the world where there is abundance of oil, and oil, again, if oil goes up, then economy goes up. If oil goes down, economy goes down. So the opportunity, but also the threat here for the automotive industry is to keep going, not being too tied to this approach. Otherwise, we risk on staying back, not staying in touch with progress in general. So that there is also a famous quote that often gets used and misused. I think it's attributed to a sheikh of the Middle East that during the union of some of these of the countries of the Middle East said, my grandfather rode a camel, I ride a G-Wagon, but my grandson is going to ride a camel again. So these, I don't know how true or not true this quote is. It's not for me to say, but it represents how a steep growth can equally turn into a steep fall. So the main challenge, hopefully this is not going to be the case. Hopefully it's going to be a stable part of the world, also for the automotive industry, also for an automotive industry that is going towards hybridization and electrification. The main opportunity, I think, in this part of the world, again, it's not only Middle East, but also Africa. And I think it's the opportunity itself, I think it's going to be Africa, because the spotlight for the automotive has always been, of course, North America is a huge market for cars in general, for mobility, let's say. Of course, Europe, historically, okay, Middle East, China, we're speaking a lot about China. Africa doesn't really seem to be on the map, but I think it will be more and more soon, not only North Africa or South Africa, but Central Africa, East Africa. It's going to grow quite a lot. There is a lot of potential. There is a lot of people that need access or want more access to mobility, to different type of mobility. And in some countries in particular, there is also quite a big investment already happening from various parts of the world. From China, China is invested massively in some parts of Africa when it comes to mobility. So I think we need to keep an eye open also for that, because it could be the next, let's say, big thing for mobility, for automotive in general.
Fascinating, Marco. Yeah, I know Africa, we had a global event actually focused on Africa a couple of years ago where everyone was saying Africa is going to be the next big thing for business across the board, including automotive. Yeah. I'm curious to shift gears slightly, talk a little bit about, we hinted at this earlier in regards to when Ron used the term smartphone on wheels, talking about the technology for youth culture and what they're interested in. And a lot of folks I've spoken to in regards to automobiles say that younger people are less and less interested in buying cars. They're less and less interested in driving them, and that they're more interested in what's in their pocket than a car. Decades ago, cars were the most sophisticated technology we could own. And now our cell phones can do even more things to an extent. So my question for you, Ron, is that difficult to capture younger generations and get them sold on the ideas of the automotive industry, buying into cars and creating that culture? What needs to be done there?
Interesting. This is what we do every day. So this is our puzzle and question that we ask the marketing teams every day. In the past, my father's age, or I don't know, few years back, it was a dream to have a car. When I was younger, in the age that I could do, 1 month later, I had a driving license. Today, in the UK, the average age of driving license, acquiring a driving license, is 27, which is like almost 10 years after the ability and legally to acquire a driving license. So young people in the UK, and we see it also in other regions in Europe, people are not so interested in vehicles. And we, as a manufacturer and the marketeers, we have the challenge how to convince these people to get into the excitement of owning a vehicle. And what we are focusing today, and if you look at car ads and marketing campaigns, they are all related to connectivity. So we are now we are not speaking about horsepowers and 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, but we focus on Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, multimedia screens, and mobile application that you can remotely turn on the air condition, the radio, the heating, or maybe even bringing your car from parking to your location. This is what we are today focusing at, and definitely you've pinpointed a big issue. We see our average age of a customer going up. Today in Israel, the average age of a Toyota new Toyota vehicle customer is 56. Okay, this is our average age of a new customer, a new vehicle. The younger generation, they either buy used cars or they get a company car, but the ones who are purchasing are usually tend to be older age. So definitely it's something that we will hit down the road and we'll have to resolve through things that are touching younger generation.
Very interesting. On this thread, I wanted to ask Marco a question. Something else that I've written about previously is sim racing, which is people playing like a video game version of racing. And Lamborghini is one of the companies that I know is into this. They have their own esports league, and there's a whole bunch of different things. There's iRacing, and Ferrari has its own esports competition. And this seems to be something that's really capturing young people's attention. My question for you, Marco, is do you view this as is this a positive thing to get younger people interested in cars through a virtual simulation, or could it be detrimental because they see they can get the same sort of thrills from something that's not actually owning a car?
It's not an easy question to answer. I think it's a hook for these younger generations. So you cannot really get the same type of emotion, of feeling from the simulator, for example. But you can get a good cut of it, a good part of it. So it could still be a way to attract a different public. At the end of the day, you need to speak the same language of the target that you want to reach. So like Ran says, it's maybe not more about the performance. Of course, it depends on the product that you are targeting, but maybe it's not just about what the car can do or the crazy performance that the car can have, because the level is now quite high. No one is surprised that a car can do a 0 to 100 or 0 to 60 miles per hour in short time, because now even, again, a Tesla, that it's a very heavy and not perceived as a sporty car, can still reach it in crazy numbers. So what do? You focus on something else. You focus on, could be connectivity, on new functions, or you also focus on these type of these type of events, like the one you mentioned, these racing championships, virtual. It doesn't seem to be only the automotive field. If you think about it, it's also video games in general. There's a lot of money, actually. There is a big industry around these type of tournaments. So it's a mix of these languages, in my opinion, and it can still be a hook for younger generation to make them interested in something that maybe it's not as popular or attractive as it was maybe 20, 40, 50 years ago. Like Ran said, it's different. It's less of a key to independence to own a car today compared to what it was maybe 50 years ago. And without a car, you would be completely cut off from anything else. Now it's more this, that if you don't have these, you are cut away. The car is you can substitute it, and this is for the marketing team to find solutions for.
Thank you, Marco. Interesting. Yeah, and to your point, the video game industry is larger than the movie and music industries combined right now. So it's a lucrative place. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. I want to ask an audience question, because I think it's particularly relevant here, that I want to ask to Ron. We have a question here about the components and microchips for the production of cars, and that some brands are even removing digital cockpits to continue the production. Some companies are willing to produce microchips and components in Europe, so you don't have to depend on Asia for production. So is that the case, Ron? And how could that impact the market in the future?
This is not just an automotive question. This is something that we will see globally across industries and across countries. Through many years, we have all been taught in business schools as well that we have to be qualified and centrally produce only the things that we need an expert in, and outsource from the experts in other regions for their supply. So we all know that steel in the early 60s were US, and then it moved to Japan. And if you want to have chips, you go to Japan or you go to Korea. And if you want to have something related to home design, you go to Italy. And there were some kind of expertise. And what we have learned through the pandemic is that once we are starting to be dependent on other markets, other suppliers to complete our products, we will never be independent, really independent. So what we see today with microchips, everybody understood that relying on microchips of Taiwan, mainly in this respect, we are limiting our ability to produce our vehicles or produce Nintendo for the children. Also, a lot of countries or a lot of industries are now doing decentralization or outsourcing in this respect, in-house. And this is more expensive. You need much more of expertise, but it gives you the real independence of controlling your entire value chain and product. And what we see today in the automotive, that chips are in scarce, but I can tell you that once the chips will resolve, there will be something else, because the vehicle is an assembly of 20,000 parts. This is the vehicle, 20,000 parts. And you have wire harness now made in Vietnam and Philippines, because it's very labor intensive. Vietnam and the Philippines are in the wire harness expertise, and automotive companies already report that once the chips will resolve, we'll have a problems with the wire harness. And Malaysia and Indonesia are experts in rubber, and we already know that we have limitation of rubber coming up from there. And the shipping industry is also having issues on their own. So we see shipping cost goes up. So what we see is much more in the automotive. The automotive is something that is now being on the focus of the media. But what we see more and more companies from Apple to H&M, more and more using the entire value chain independently.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah, it's so fascinating. It's such a global and complicated process creating cars. It's truly fascinating when you dive into it. Shimon, I want to ask you before we get to more of our to our audience Q&A. Shimon, I want to ask you. We've endured about almost 2 years now of this pandemic. As we emerge out of it, and we're beginning to emerge out of it now, what do you think is the next great challenge that's going to be facing the automotive industry that the industry has to be ready for?
Well, the industry is working mainly in two segments. One is the business or replacing car if you have an accident or something like this. And the second thing is tourism. And every one of them is different kind of market and different kind of problems. I think that the problem today is to buy a car, because the manufacturers don't have enough cars and you cannot buy a car. So what they do, they try not to sell their car and use it for a longer period of time. In today's cars, it's created problems of breakdowns and so on. Maybe electronic car will not have this kind of problem, but the problem is really supply. I understand that I hear from customers that in America today, the rental car companies are taking the cars without all these chips, and they tell the customer, look, it's a new car, but you don't have electronics. You see this screen over here, it will be empty, but you can drive. So you don't have the fun, the feeling of the technology, but you can drive the car. And this is what they are doing. I hope that this will be finished in a year or two, but today is really a big problem.
I can actually add to that. We are now delivering cars without multimedia. So as Shimon said, there are fleet rent-a-car companies, the Avis, Hertz, your cars mentioned earlier. We are selling them vehicles today, Toyotas, without a multimedia screen, and we tell them you can take it, you can rent it, but it's not without the multimedia navigation. Once you get it, by the way, we delivered in November. We will give them the multimedias in January. But they want it. They said that we want it because we don't have vehicles to serve our clientele for Christmas holiday. So just give it to us, and in January we'll fill up the missing parts. And this is for a private person to listen to something like that. It's something unheard of, but this is the real life situation today.
Wow, fascinating. It's been so interesting talking to all of you and hearing all your expertise. I want to kick it over to Janet now to get to all of our audience questions. So Janet, take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of our panelists. Ron, you have been following some of the questions in the chat. You mentioned you have a slide you might want to share that could answer one of them.
Yes, I will share now. There was a question about when we were going to see more and more electrified vehicles. Or there was a question regarding when we will see the majority of vehicles becoming electrified. And what we can see now, okay, is that the regulators are ruling deadlines for manufacturers to sell only zero-emission vehicles. So 100% zero-emission vehicles. Norway will be the first one. 2025, Norway will ban any internal combustion engine vehicle for entering the country. So we will still have all the long tail of vehicles that we have registered pre-2025, and slowly we'll finish. But as of 2025, only zero-emission vehicles will be entering Norway. And you can see more and more countries regulating these things. And I believe that around 2030 to 2035, I believe that the majority of new car sales will be electric. Majority of new car sales. It doesn't mean that the old, more than 1 billion cars that we have on the roads around the world will change immediately to electrified, but the new cars already, the majority will be electric. And there was another question on the thread regarding hydrogen.
Yes, please.
So zero-emission car could be today, according to today's technology, either through a battery electric vehicle, or fuel cell, and which is based on hydrogen. And hydrogen is the real ultimate solution we all strive for, because in hydrogen we have no scarcity. It's a biological. We can have unlimited hydrogen in the world. The pollution from the vehicle is dips of water, so hydrogen is ideal for that. And we are not polluting anywhere. With batteries, we're still polluting to produce the electricity and maybe mining of the lithium. And with hydrogen, it will be really the ultimate solution. Unfortunately, hydrogen is still very expensive to contain and to transport, and it's still not in the form that we want, but this will happen gradually. So what I foresee in terms of electricity or zero-emission vehicles, I see two steps. Until 2050, okay, we are looking at like 25 to 30 years of dominance of electric vehicles. And from there, let's say 20 years from now, they will start to see more dominance of hydrogen vehicles. It's not new technology. Hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are here from the 80s. In 1986, Mercedes already had an A-class fuel cell. Toyota and Honda had in the 90s a vehicle with fuel cell. Today, we have trucks driving on fuel cells. So it's not the technology that we don't familiar with. However, it's very difficult to make it affordable and easy for refueling and transport the hydrogen. So we see an era of electrified vehicles, and later, I believe hydrogen will kick in and will be the dominance.
Thank you so much, Marco. Please.
This switch.
Sorry?
Go ahead, Marco.
No, I just said that I fully agree. I believe there's going to be this switch in the agenda. Now it's all about the electricity, electrification, And it's not really true that it's zero emission, because it costs a lot, again, to mine the materials, which there is scarcity for, to produce the batteries, and then also to recycle the batteries. It's quite a mess at the moment. And it makes you think that when the first internal combustion car came out, it was actually advertised as less polluting compared to horses, because there was no excrement from a car. So it's only a matter of point of view. Now we see the batteries better than internal combustion. I think tomorrow, that it's not too far, we will see something else as better than the batteries, and the batteries will be demonized as today diesel engines are, or internal combustion in general is.
That's just fascinating. We have a question back on the technology side of things. What about cybersecurity and the impact of cybersecurity on risk on the car industry, production, development, strategy? Ron, is there, do you want to get us started?
Big risk as we see it on mobile phones and we see it on our computer. In the minute we start to be connected, we are facing the cybersecurity risk. While today's vehicle, until today, let's say, most of the vehicles are not connected. It's a box with an engine, with multimedia receiving some radio, receiving some through antennas, but not transmitting and not connected. But today, the world is changing into more connected vehicles. We'll be connected to the grid, to traffic lights, or to the grid to vehicle connectivity. And there will be connectivity of the vehicle to the manufacturer that we can do over-the-air updates for software, etc. So in the same manner that you have on the phone, and you can see how often you have on your iPhones updates on the software for security purposes and for other developments related to the operating system. And this will be the life that we will have on vehicles. We will have more and more updates to protect ourselves against cybersecurity, and how to make sure that the apps, the mobile apps that we will upload to the vehicle will not create any damage to the operating system of the vehicle. It's a real threat, it's a real concern. And for that reason, let's say, the automotive companies, or traditional automotive companies, are very hesitant to move towards full connectivity in the vehicle. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I would like to
please.
add that the car rental companies, it's very dangerous, but for them it's fantastic, because they be connected to the rental station 24 hours a day, and the car rental will know where the driver is going, where he's driving, what he's doing. They can talk to him and say, don't go there, it's danger road, and so on. The car rental company will love it, because, you know, if the car is not coming back on time or something like that, it's very, very good, but it's dangerous.
It's a form of control at the end of the day.
Also today, connected vehicles are tend to be stolen. Yeah, if the car is all the time connecting to a network, even the thieves know that there will be traced. Traceable. Today, you cannot steal a Tesla, because they can remotely stop your vehicle. They can remotely know where you are. So in this respect, they are in an advantage, while vehicles which are closed box without connectivity are transferable and stolen much often. So there are some positive aspect of it.
Very, very, very interesting. So I learned something the other day that in 1918, when the Spanish flu, the last pandemic came through New York City, that the buildings, the heating, the New York government decided that the building heat should be on really high, so people will open their windows. So that is why all of you Baruch alumni may remember being in these overheated New York apartments. Apparently, it's because of this pandemic and wanting to have fresh air come in. And in fact, yesterday in my office at Baruch, we had buildings and grounds walk around, making sure all of our windows open. So beyond opening your window, which in certain places may not be such a good idea, what are car companies doing in terms of air quality and protecting the consumer within the cars? Marco, I'm sure Lamborghini has something very sexy.
I'm not sure if to consider it sexy or not, but you are right. All the industry, every manufacturer at the moment is focusing more on, in general, the health of the driver. So it's not only comfort. I mean, the idea is if you spend time behind the wheel, it needs to be in the best way possible for yourself. There is a lot of attention for the visibility, the comfort, safety is never been so high in the industry. And other than that, there is also, yes, the topic of the air quality. So there is air purifier, there is different level of filters. There is, now it's getting quite common with some, I think, North American and also European manufacturer to integrate different level of different perfumes in the air conditioning system, let's say. And sometimes in some models, some brands, they offer different perfumes, different smell, depending on, for example, the driving mode that you are using, that you are selecting in your car. So there is the little attention to everything that the human body can feel and perceive somehow. And like you said, now that of course the pandemic has been on top of our agenda for the past 2 years, basically, when it comes to the quality of the air and not only on new cars, but even this is something that I think a lot of us have, or at least I've witnessed myself in just the ownership of the car. Every time you want your car cleaned or serviced, or you go at an event, whenever there is someone working on your car, sometimes they offer the free sanification of the cabin, or there is an extra attention to what it's hygiene or health in general. It's an additional touch, I guess.
Fascinating. Shimon or Ran, do you want to make any additional comment about the air quality and hygiene of the car experience?
I've answered in the Q&A on the that there is today filters that Marco mentioned, filters that are like a mask, N95, N98 in the vehicle. Another question that I saw here on the thread is related to the batteries.
Yes.
Battery technology.
Right.
And Shimon mentioned it earlier about battery technology being evolved and range anxiety will be reduced with the technology. And that's what we see. The average battery improvement is about 8% a year. So we have the technology is moving quite slowly. It's not like microchips that used to be double,
right.
But it's about 8% a year. So we are able to reduce costs and increase range at the pace of 8% a year. So within 3-4 years, we are able to get about 25-30% improvement in price and in extending the range. And this is something that with the technology improvement, we'll see coming up. We'll see more, let's say, harmonization of cost between an internal combustion engine and electric vehicle, with at the same time range anxiety deteriorating. This is something that we have to see, and for that reason, I believe electric vehicles will be dominant. There was a question related to what car manufacturers are doing, governments either restricting carbon emission for adding congestion fee, city standards. What should the car manufacturers to do to overcome? I don't understand the question. People from keeping buying new cars. Car manufacturers will not prevent people from buying cars. This is their business, unfortunately.
All right, I'm going to defer to Greg for one last question to you all.
Thank you, Janet. Yeah, and we're wrapping up now. I want to thank our panelists for a great discussion. I also want to end on a fun question just to ask all of our panelists. I'm curious to know, what's the car that you drive on a daily basis? And is there a dream car you'd love to own one day? Why don't we start with Ron?
Wow. On a daily basis, I'm driving a Toyota Camry. Very boring, doing my job with Toyota Camry. Giving an example with this car. However, I have two weekend cars. I have one which is Toyota GT86, which is a sports car, and I have one Mazda MX-5 Cabrio, 20 years old. Still keeping it 20 years, and it's with like 100,000 kilometers for 20 years. So it's very precious, these two weekend cars.
Very nice. Shimon, how about you?
Well, I drive a Lexus, very comfortable car. I like it and enjoy it. I have a Lexus for the next 10 years. Changing.
It gets the job done. Do you have a weekend car or a dream car? No?
But I'm curious to hear Marco's car.
I'm curious to hear Marco,
I'm actually quite aligned with you, Ren. I drive the daily is a boring but very good quality, in my opinion, Audi Q5. It gets the job done. It's the perfect size for the city of Dubai, where there is traffic everywhere. It does the job. But I'm looking for a weekend car, let's say, a project, and I'm actually looking for an MX-5. So it's even if we are working for manufacturer, even if we are always have in mind the electrification and hybridization, I see that we're both hit with a little bit of analogic nostalgia. So it's apparently it's quite common. But,
yeah, we have to come to visit you to see the cars.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, but so for the moment, I don't have a weekend car, but I cannot complain too much. I have to say that it's often that we get to participate to events and actually drive the cars that we sell. So it's good part of the job, I guess.
That's a nice perk, yes. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. This has been a fascinating discussion. I want to thank the entire Baruch EMEA network, and we will provide this recording afterwards, as well as with links to the WhatsApp, as well as the LinkedIn group. Thank you to Elia and Alex. And Janet, would you like to say any closing remarks?
Just my thanks as well to our panelists. Unfortunately, Peter's connectivity did not enable him to participate. So hopefully he has a few ideas up his sleeve, some new projects. So perhaps we'll get him for another panel. If any of you have ideas for panels that you would like to, or topics you would like to hear covered, or panels you might be interested in participating in, please reach out to me and we can talk to you about that. I wish you all a very happy and healthy holiday season. May 2022 be our best year yet. Thank you, Bearcats. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
Baruch College.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.